Hello everyone, welcome to my guide to Exosister post-Burst Protocol. So Exosister's getting two new cards in Burst Protocol, Exosister Batmater and Exosister Carmael, and these cards are incredible. They're unbelievable, they do everything Exosister could have wanted, they are straight up customs, they're phenomenal. And I'm going to show you why in this video. So first off, Exosisters are an archetype designed around anti- graveyard. Basically, if your opponent moves something out of the graveyard, the Exosisters benefit off of it. The way they do that is by Xyzing using just themselves into another Exosister Xyz monster. So if you were to use a card to move a card out of the graveyard, the Exosister monster would trigger, allowing it to then use itself as the single Xyz material to make one of your mini Xyz monsters. And this is a quick effect, so you can do this on either turn, which is crazy. That's kind of the whole design theory behind the deck, is messing around with the graveyard, or specifically punishing your opponent for messing around with the graveyard. And they have a lot of ways to do that, so let's get into it. First off, we've got 3 Exosister Martha. This card is the best Exosister main deck monster because if you control no monsters or only Xyz monsters, you can special summon this card from the hand and an Exosister Ellis from your deck. You cannot special summon the monsters the turn you use this effect except Exosisters. That lock is crazy. It basically means you can only play Exosister monsters in Exosister or monsters that exclusively normal summon themselves, which is, if you notice, why we're on these spirit monsters. Martha is a phenomenal card. It is the only Exosister that is a 1-card starter. It's also got a very unique thing among the Exosisters. Most of the Exosisters say if your opponent moves a card out of the grave, they then can special summon an Exosister Xyz monster, but Martha is if either player moves a card out of the graveyard at all. So theoretically, we're not abusing that in this list, but theoretically you could do something like DD Crow, a card in the graveyard, and that would trigger Martha. So theoretically use a card like DD Crow as an extender, or Abystial wouldn't work because you would be locked, but something like DD Crow, right? DD Crow, or like something else that banishes cards out of the grave, you could trigger Martha with that. One of the cards in our side deck, the Cyberdark engine, also can move cards out of the graveyard and only does normal summons. So that can also trigger Martha. A lot of really cool things you can do with this card, but most importantly, it summons 2 monsters and lets us get into our Exosister plays. After that, we've got 3 Exosister Ellis, the card that Martha summons. If you control an Exosister monster, you can summon this from your hand, and then if you control Exosister Stella, you gain 800 life points. And then it has the Exosister move effect. So you'll notice all the Exosisters kind of pair with another Exosister. Ellis pairs with Exosister Stella, which we'll get into after this. And and Ellis is at 3 in this list for 2 reasons. The first is that you cycle through a bunch of Ellises in your combos, and not just your combos, but just throughout the game. You summon them off Martha, you summon them off Vadis, which we'll get into when we get into Vadis. You summon this card a lot, and you're searching it as an extender, which is the other reason we're playing it at 3. This is the only Exosister that can extend besides Martha without your normal summon, so it is a pretty valuable card. After that, we've got 2 Exosister Stella. During your main phase, you can summon an Exosister from your hand. Then if you control Ellis, you can gain 800 life points. This is a fine card. It just gets an Exosister out of your hand. You do use this in your combos. We're on 2 of it just for names. You do want to run a certain amount of Exosister names in the deck for the grind game. I think 9 is okay. If you're worried about the amount of names, because honestly this is kind of low, this is probably the minimum you can play. You could bump Stella to 3, or you could bump Sophia to 2, or you could play Irene, a card that I decided not to play, which I will get into what those 2 do after this. Which means right now, we're going to go into Exosister Sophia. If you control another Exosister monster, you can draw a card. Then if you control Exosister Irene, you can gain 800 life points. It's a fine effect. Going +1 off of your combos isn't bad. That being said, this card isn't a starter or an extender, so it's kind of just whatever. It's really just to go plus, and it is a name. That's really all there is to it. Then I'm going to talk about Exosister Irene before we go forward and why I'm not playing it. The reason I'm not playing it is because it's not very good. You can place an Exosister card from your hand onto the bottom of the deck, draw a card, then if you control Sophia, you can gain 800 life. It's just kind of a worse Sophia, so I didn't really want to play this card, but if you want more names, Irene is probably the first one I'd add, either Irene or a second Sophia. They're both fine. It's just if you want more names, you could play these cards. Then we've got 3 Exosister packs. During the main phase, you can pay 800 life to add an Exosister card from your deck to your hand. Then, if you added a monster by this effect, you can summon it if the other Exosister mentioned on it is on your field or in your grave. So basically, you add an Exosister, and then if you have, and then if the Exosister monsters that, if you control, like, so let's say you search Martha and you have Ellis in your grave, you can then summon Martha because Ellis is mentioned on Martha. This is really good because it means, let's say you draw 2 copies of packs, you can search using the first one as a starter, and then you can set the other one and then use it on your opponent's turn to summon one of your Exosisters from the deck as an interruption, since all the Exosisters can theoretically be used if your opponent moves something out of the grave. Really, really good card. Feels phenomenal in the deck. And just really good for also setting up interactions. Then we've got the new card, Exosister Bat Mater. When this card is activated, you can add 2 Exosister monsters from your deck to your hand, then discard a card. You can target 1 face-up monster you control immediately after this effect resolves, normal summon an Exosister that is mentioned on that monster. And then if a monster is sent to your opponent's grave, even during the damage step, you can make your opponent banish one of them. This card is unbelievable. It does everything Exosister could have wanted. It's a searcher, specifically a double search, and this card itself is searchable with one of our Xyz monsters, which means this can be used as a combo extender. So you can start with Martha, summon your Ellis, make that monster, and then use this to search like Stella and Sophia, and then keep extending from there. That's just something the deck wasn't able to do before. You just didn't have a way to turn 2 Exosister names into 2 more Exosister names. Now you do. But that's not all this card does. It's like a okay extender with that second effect. It doesn't come up a lot, but when it does come up, it's nice. But the really important effect is that last effect. Notably, it makes your opponent banish their monster, which means it triggers all of your Exosister effects. So this card is also an end board piece that triggers all of your Exosisters. Notably, this is crazy when combined with something like packs, where you can go chain 1 Bat Mater to make your opponent banish a monster, and then chain 2 packs to summon an Exosister from deck. So then on resolution, that Exosister will, or on a new chain, because that Exosister was on the field when that card got moved, the Exosister will then trigger to tag out into an Xyz monster. And that gets even better when we get into the first trap card, Exosister Vadis. Vadis can pay 800 life to choose 1 Exosister from your deck, then take another Exosister from your deck that's mentioned on that monster and summon both. So, and then you are locked into Exosisters from the extra deck for the rest of the turn. This card is crazy because of Bat Mater. So basically, you're going to be ending on this plus Bat Mater, and when you use the Bat Mater effect to make your opponent banish a monster, you can chain Vadis, which will summon 2 Exosisters, and then those Exosisters on a new chain will trigger both of their effects. So this equals 2 to 3 interruptions on its own, depending on what you summon. Unbelievable card. With the new cards, it's just insane. And it's super easy to get to. You have so many ways to get this card. The new card lets you get to it as well. It feels broken, genuinely. And it helps layer the end board really well, since none of this is reliant on you controlling monsters until you actually do it. If you have Bat Mater and Vadis in the back row, that's all you need. And then we have Exosister Returnia, the other trap card. If all monsters you control are Exosister monsters, you can pay 800 life, target a card your opponent controls or is in their grave, banish it, then you can apply one of the other effects. Immediately after this effect resolves, Xyz summon an Exosister using Xyz monsters you control, or if you Xyz summon this turn, you can banish a card your opponent controls. So this card is really, really powerful. It allows, obviously a target banish is really good, but those other 2 effects are also really strong. Notably, if you've used Vadis or Pax to summon an Exosister and then have it tag out into another monster, Returnia can then banish an additional card. Also, our other boss monster also lets us Xyz summon during our opponent's turn, which also lets us do that. And then that second effect to Xyz summon also lets us make one of our other boss monsters that takes 2 rank 4 Exosisters. And notably, that card is a soft once per turn. So you can turn the 2 Exosister Xyz monsters that you summoned off of your Vadis into the other 2 Exosisters. You can turn those 2 Xyz monsters that you summoned into that rank 8, and then that is another banish. This card's unbelievable. If you're able to end on like the big boss monster, Vadis, Batmater, and Returnia, I'm gonna be honest, it's really hard to lose. Your opponent has to have like evenly matched. That's like the one card this deck isn't good into. But even evenly matched, if their deck interacts with the graveyard, Vadis is still a good card on its own. Like that's what's crazy. Vadis is insane by itself. Or you can just keep Magnifica, which is 2 interruptions on its own as well. Like it is really hard to break this deck's end board. Whereas before, this deck's end board was kind of ass. It was kind of really bad. Unless your opponent was moving cards out of the graveyard constantly to trigger Vadis. But if they could play around this card, it felt really terrible. But now, this deck's end board feels so hard to interact with and deal with. After that, we've got our Spirit Engine. So we've got 3 Aratama, which can on normal summon search any spirit out of your deck. We've got one Ichiki Sayori Hime. This card, if you control a monster with 800 attack or defense, aka any of your Exosisters or Aratama, can reveal itself in hand to normal summon itself. And then if it's normal summon, you do add a level 4 light or dark with 800 attack or defense, aka Aratama or one of our Exosisters. So this allows us to, so basically the combo is we're going to normal Aratama is going to search Sayori Hime, and then Sayori Hime is going to summon itself and then search Martha or Ellis out of the deck. So this is our best starter, Aratama. It does everything. It just ends on the best board. It's the only like true 1-card combo in the deck. Just a very, very, very strong card. We are also on one Sakitama, which is just a spirit monster that can reveal itself in hand and then normal summon a spirit monster afterwards. The only reason we're playing this card is so that the Aratama combo is repeatable, and also if we draw Sakitama with Aratama, it gives us the most extension possible. That's really it. Nothing crazy. Both of these cards are 1 card. Like, doing Aratama search Sakitama or Ichiki Sayori Hime is full combo either way, so it all works out in the end. After that is all non-engine. We've got 1 called by, 1 cross out, because this deck is kind of weak into the higher impact hand traps. On that note, we are on 1 copy of Nib, 1 copy of Droll, and 1 copy of Veiler, specifically because of crossout. These are just the 3 hand traps that I think would be the most popular and or are the scariest for this deck. This deck doesn't inherently beat Nibiru. Your combos play okay into Nibiru now, but they're still a little weak into it if you're not doing like a 2-card combo. If you're doing most of your 2-card combos can get to your spoiler Omni Negate before your opponent can do this, but a lot of your combos don't, so you are weak to this card in some of your combos. Droll is just scary because like you are searching multiple times in a turn and turning off your cards like Batmater or Pax. Pax isn't as bad because it's a quick play so you can chain it, but turning off Batmater is kind of rough, especially because the search effect is mandatory, so you can't use this as an interaction if you get drolled before you can use it, which feels really bad. Thankfully, I do believe Droll post-burst protocol is going to be a lot less popular, so I don't think this will be that big an issue. Also, one of the cards we are on turns that off, which is Dimension Shifter. Yeah, this deck is a shifter deck. It doesn't play with the graveyard at all. It does want your opponent to interact with the graveyard, which can conflict, but this deck still ends on a really powerful end board if you don't use the if your opponent can't use the graveyard anyway, because you can just end on like the big rank 8 plus Returnia, and that's still really strong. That's still a lot of interactions, still really hard to deal with, especially under Shifter. Draco Tail specifically cannot beat this card. If they get Shifter, they lose the game. I'm going to be honest. Like, it's just over. After that, we got 3 Fualos. This is a really good target for crossout as well, but obviously Fua is just a really strong card. Ash Blossom is also a really strong card, also negates Fualos. Bell is going to be really good into Draco Tail, and I think it's going to be solid into Branded. I think those are going to be the 2 best decks of the new format. And then 3 Imperm. It's just a solid hand trap. These are all just solid hand traps. You also want to be playing this for crossout. It's just a good card. After that is our extra deck, which I will start with our big boss monster, Exosisters Magnifica. Takes 2 rank 4 Exosister Xyz monsters, and it must be Xyz summoned with the above materials, so you can't like cheat this out with one of your Exosisters. This card can make 2 attacks during the battle phase, and then once per turn, you can quick effect detach a material from it to banish a card your opponent controls. Notably, that's a soft once per turn, so if you make this on your opponent's turn, if you already have a copy out, you can use both, which is nice. When your opponent activates a card or effect, you can return an Xyz monster you own, attach this card to your extra deck, then you can special summon that Xyz monster from your extra deck using this card as material, and that is treated as an Xyz summon. So basically, this can tag out into one of its materials. So you'll detach whatever material you don't care about using as the tag out, and to banish a card, and then afterwards you will tag this out into either, usually it's going to be Carmael or Michaelis, which we will get into Carmael next. Carmael takes 2 level 4 Exosister monsters. That's notable because all the other Exosister Xyz are generic, besides Magnifica, of course. If this card is Xyz summoned, you can activate this effect. During the end phase of this turn, set an Exosister spell trap from your deck, grave, or banishment. That's insane. This deck didn't have a second way to get to an Exosister spell or trap, so this guarantees you get to end on one of the trap cards, even into Nibiru. And then when your opponent activates a monster effect or a normal spell trap card, you can detach all materials from this card, and if you do, the activated effect becomes add a card from your opponent's graveyard to your hand. Wow, that effect's crazy. So it's kind of weird that it doesn't negate quick plays, continuous, and field spells, but that's not a big deal. It's really not. This hits most effects in the game. It obviously hits every monster effect, but normal spell or trap cards are the majority of spell and trap cards, so this might as well be an Omni Negate. And then it forces your opponent to add a card from your grave to your hand. So you also get to go +1 off of this, but that's not all. This also triggers every single Exosister monster, because it makes your opponent do that effect. It's incredible. It's everything this deck could have wanted. Ideally, the only unfortunate thing about this card is that because it takes 2 level 4 Exosisters, you can't make it with Aratama and like one of your spirits. So you in your combos, if you were able to do that, you actually would have been able to make this on 3 summons and then just sit on this and then do your full combo without even worrying about this. Unfortunately, this card can't be made with those 2 cards, so that combo doesn't exist. But it's still insane. It's still a really, really good card. It's phenomenal. After that is Exosister Michaelis, the next best Exosister monster. It can't be destroyed by battle with a monster special summoned from the graveyard. If you control this card that was Xyz summoned this turn by using an Exosister monster's material, you can quick effect target a card your opponent controls or in their graveyard and banish it. You can detach a material from this card to add an Exosister spell trap from your deck to your hand. This card's insane. It's an extender because it lets you get to your Batmater or your Pax or one of your trap cards for your end board pieces. Or its really strong effect is that if it was Xyz summon that turn, you get to target a card your opponent controls or in their grave and banish it. This can be used on your opponent's turn when you tag out into one of your Exosister monsters. But also, going second, this card, that effect's just live. So going second, this card is an extender and it's removal, which is phenomenal, and it's quick effect removal at that. So if you make this card, you're immediately threatening something on the board, and your opponent kind of has to deal with this card immediately, or else you're going to plus off of it. Banger card, phenomenal. It's the reason we're playing this card at 3. It's probably your strongest interaction, besides your Omni Negate. After that is 2 Exosister Caspitel. It cannot be destroyed by battle with a monster special summoned from the graveyard. I'm going to note right now, all of the Exosister rank 4s except Carmael have that effect. If this card's Exosister... Oh my god. If this card is Xyz summoned using an Exosister monster as material, you can activate this effect. Neither player can special summon monsters from the grave for the rest of the turn. And you can detach a material from this card to search an Exosister monster from your deck to your hand. This is another extender for your Exosister extra deck, but also it is a floodgate if you summon it. Really, really annoying for some decks. Locking them out of special summoning from the grave isn't crazy. There's not a ton of decks that just like shuts down at this point. But it's not a bad effect to have in the utility belt. After that, we've got Exosister Jabreen. If you control this card that was Xyz summoned this turn by using an Exosister, you can target an effect monster your opponent controls, negate its effects until the end of the turn. And you can detach material from this card. For the rest of the turn, all Xyz monsters you control will gain 800 attack. So this is your other interruption that's not a floodgate. It's a target negate, which is really good. Really good to have. This is really good into the matchups that don't rely on the graveyard. Usually you're going to be making Carmael, Michaelis, or Jabreen into a lot of matchups, unless your opponent is specifically weak to the Caspitel floodgate effect or the Asophiel floodgate effect, which we'll get into in a second. The other really important thing about this card, and the reason we're running it at 2, is that the last effect, to detach a material and gain 800 attack for the rest of the turn, is really, really important for OTKing. With Magnifica, it does 7,200 damage with the attack boost up. A lot of these cards, it makes it really easy to OTK with that extra 800, because mind you, every single Exosister equals 800 more damage. So having like 2 Exosisters up equals 1,600 more damage, which is a lot. And notably, that effect is lingering, so you could like use Jabrine as one of the materials for the Magnifica, and it would still gain that boost. So really, really nice effect to have. Really helps you OTK in this deck. After that is the last but not least, Exosister Asophiel. If this card exceeds summoned using an Exosister monster's material, you can activate this effect. Neither player can activate card effects in the grave this turn. That's right, it is Abyss Dweller. This deck has access to the Abyss Dweller. That's insane. It also has a second effect that you can detach material from this card, target a monster your opponent controls, and return it to the hand. So it's also a solid breaker as well. This card is so broken into Draco Tail. You basically shut off their whole deck's game plan. Going second into the deck, it's also crazy because you get to use this and then your opponent can't trigger any of the effects of their monsters when you fuse them off, so that messes up their follow-up, that messes up their interactions because the Pan and Urgula and the Malulu can't interact with you. It's broken. This card's insane, and obviously making it on your opponent's turn as one of your summons from your Exosister monsters is ridiculous into that matchup. It's crazy in a branded too. That effect isn't good into like Yummy, but it is insane in a Mitsurugi. And even though it's not good in a Yummy, the other Floodgate effect is good in a Yummy. So you can just put up the 2 Floodgates and there's almost nothing they can do about it. It's ridiculous. This deck, this is the reason this deck is really powerful as like an anti-meta strategy into so many decks. And it's why if you want something that is budget friendly and also really good at taking out the other decks by countering them specifically, this is a really good deck to do it. After that, we've got 1 Zeus and 1 Typhon. You can make them. Why not play them? We have the room. You could bump other Exosister monsters up in ratios if you really wanted to instead of playing these 2, because these 2 don't come up very much, so totally defensible to do that. After that, we've got some extra stuff in the side. The one thing I want to talk about first is the Cyber Dark package. So you might be confused why these cards are down here. It's because there's a little combo you can do that lets you go Cyberdark Claw to search a Cyberdark spell trap, which will search Cyberdark Realm, and then Realm will search Cyberdark Edge, and then you can use Realm to extra normal Cyberdark Edge, and then Edge will equip the Claw from the grave. The reason this is so good is that, 1, it is a normal summon extender, so you can use it under the Martha lock, but also it moves a card out of the graveyard. So let's say you go Exosister Martha effect to summon the 2 monsters. Your opponent ashes that. You then go normal summon Martha, and then you go Claw, search Realm, and then you can go Realm, search Edge, and then extra normal Edge, and then Edge will equip the Claw from grave. That will then trigger the Martha to then rank up into one of these Xyz monsters. So it's a really, really good extender. That being said, I just wanted to make room for non-engine over this, but this is a really fun engine to play. And if you want more extenders in this deck, I really can't recommend this engine enough. I love these cards. The other thing you could run as more extenders is just more copies of Sayori Hime and more copies of Sakitama. Both of these are perfectly solid extenders. If you don't want to play like this bigger 5-card package, these are also really solid. It's just more guys that are good. I'd recommend Sakitama over Sayori Hime, and the only reason I say that is because Sayori Hime requires you to control an 800 attack or defense monster. So it's a little more situational. But they're both good. They're both very solid. Now, let's get into the combos. I have 2 to show. I've got the Martha combo and the Aratama combo. We'll be starting off with the Martha combo. We're going to go Exosister Martha effect to summon itself and Ellis. We're then going to Xyz the 2 into Exosister Michaelis. Michaelis is going to search Exosister Batmater. Batmater is going to search Stella and Sophia, and then we'll discard the extra card in our hand. We'll use Stella to summon Sophia, and then Sophia will draw us a card. We'll then Xyz for Carmael, and then Carmael will set in the end phase, and then we'll Xyz for Magnifica and pass. Then we'll get Vadis. And then now on our opponent's turn, we have the Magnifica effect to banish a card non-targeting. And then when our opponent uses a card or effect, we can tag out into whatever we didn't detach. So if we want to use Michaelis off of the Magnifica, we can keep the Michaelis. If we want to make the Carmael off of the Magnifica, we can keep the Carmael. You know, whatever works best. I would argue usually you want to keep Michaelis, but it really is entirely situational on the matchup and what happens, which I really like. I like that this deck is so flexible in what interruptions you use. And then we also have the Vadis, which will trigger if our opponent moves something out of the grave, or we'll summon Exosisters, and then those Exosisters will trigger if something moves out of the grave. But also we have the Batmater, which can force our opponent to move something out of the grave, which can also trigger our Vadis. And I'm going to show that now. So we're going to have the opponent summon some guys, do some things, make an Xyz monster, use that Xyz monster to detach, and then search, and then that will trigger our Batmater, and then we'll chain to the Vadis. So we'll summon Stella and Ellis out of the deck, and then the Batmater will force them to move something out of the grave. That will trigger both of our monsters to now make an Exosister Jabreen and an Exosister Carmael. And then Carmael, as a bonus, also gets us follow-up when it's Xyz summoned. Really, really good. So if you notice, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 interruptions off of this 1-card combo. Notably, this plays under Shifter. This plays under a bunch of really strong cards. And we started this combo without using our normal summon, so it's really easy to extend through this as well. Really, really strong combo. Let's get into the next one. We're going to start with 1 Aratama. I believe I had an extra card in hand, but I don't think you need it for this. We're going to go Ichiki Sayori Hime. It's going to summon itself and then search our Martha out of the deck. We're then going to Xyz for Michaelis. Michaelis is going to actually this time search our Vadis early. The reason we search Vadis early and not Batmater is that if our opponent nibs us here, or nibs us right here after summoning the Martha and the Ellis, we will still have the Vadis after getting nibbed. There's not really another card you can search that still gives you an end board after getting nibbed because we've used our normal summon. So you aren't able to like normal Stella after getting nibbed and then summon the guy and then keep going. So it just makes more sense to search Vadis here to play around the Nibiru. We're then going to summon our 2 monsters and then use them to make Carmael, and then Carmael will set in the end phase, and then we'll Xyz for Magnifica, and we'll set the Vadis, and then the Carmael will set the Returnia in the end phase. So notably, this is 1 interruption off the Magnifica, or sorry, 2 interruptions off the Magnifica, hypothetically 2 interruptions off the Vadis. You can force your opponent to trigger this with Carmael's effect, so I'm not going to say it's like entirely dependent on your opponent to play into this. It's just a little harder to get there and it will take a little longer. But you should be able to guaranteed end on Vadis on your opponent's turn, or not end on Vadis, but trigger Vadis and the monster you summon off of it on your opponent's turn. And then Returnia is either 1 or 2 more interactions, depending on how you use it. If you use the effect to Xyz summon, this card actually equals, I think, 2, 3 more interactions, because you then can summon Magnifica, a second copy of Magnifica on your opponent's turn, and then use its effects again. So it is like more interruptions. Honestly, you maybe should play 3 Magnifica because you can make multiple on your opponent's turn. But yeah, it's a lot. This board is just better, like objectively, than the other one, to be honest. The only downside is that if Magnifica gets dealt with, like let's say it gets kaiju. I mean, no one's on kaijus right now, but theoretically, if it were to get kaiju'd, it would be pretty bad. This board is a lot weaker into like board breakers, but it is a way stronger overall, and it is better into non-engine as well. So that's been the deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed. Exosister is a deck I've liked for quite a while. I just wish it was a little stronger, and these really brought it up to par. I think these are going to make Exosister a really strong, bare minimum tier 2 deck, if not like a tier 1.5 deck. Really, its only problems is just that hand traps can be kind of rough. I think this deck would struggle to beat like 2 hand traps, to be honest. 2 good hand traps. But notably, it beats a lot of the stuff that's going to be good in a Branded Dracotail. It's not bad in Abystials. It's not bad in a Bell. It feels great. Feels really, really good. Anyway, I will see you all next time. Goodbye.